Now, representatives from the UN Security Council will be meeting on Monday to discuss a resolution that would condemn the Syrian government for its crackdown. They could vote on that measure in the next few days. But for more on this, we're joined by James Denslow, who's a security analyst and writer based at King's College in London. James Denslow, what's your assessment of the international community's response to events in Syria? Why haven't we seen the sort of strong condemnation and consensus that many people have been calling for?
Well, I certainly think the responsibility to protect is not being upheld by the United Nations, and I think it's very interesting to see how they're split into three distinct camps. You have the Western-led camp from the USA, from France and Britain, looking to basically put forward a very bland resolution in front of the Security Council, asking for the Red Cross to be allowed into Syria and asking for the Syrians to stop killing their own people. And then you have the non-aligned countries, the South Africans, the Brazilians and the Indians, who are deeply concerned that a Security Council resolution could be stretched and the mandate could be expanded, a bit like what happened with 1973 in Libya. So they're deeply uncertain. And then on the other hand, you have these countries who are either allied to or very close to the Syrians. You have the Chinese, the Russians and the Lebanese, who are all sort of against the Security Council resolution. So it seems as if while the UN talk, the Syrians have continued carte blanche to do what they're doing right now.
So, James, do you think we're likely to get some kind of sort of compromise, watered-down resolution that has no bite and no chance of intervention?
Well, I think if you look at the resolution as it stands, I think it's pretty watered down. I think the Syrians will completely ignore it, as they've already ignored Western attempts to lead sanctions and military embargoes and what have you. The Syrian regime is concerned with one thing and one thing only, that is the maintenance of its rule in the country. And I think unless there are a serious change of direction from closer allies like Iran and Russia, you're not going to see any change in terms of behaviour on the ground. I think it's interesting that William Hague, the British Foreign Secretary, spoke last week and said that the Russians do choose to veto this resolution. It'll be on their conscience, and I guess that is what international diplomacy is attempting to do here, put the blame on inaction at the UN on the Russians, while of course the death toll in Syria continues to rise.
So if the UN Security Council isn't the proper forum for consensus and action on Syria, who or what is, and how can action be taken?
Well, it's an excellent question. Ultimately, the UN has proved itself unable to really consistently and effectively address the problems of countries that start to slaughter their own people. They're designed more or less as an institution to prevent wars between states. I think that the West, and certainly countries who would look to prevent further violence in Syria, should look for a far more creative approach to preventing continued killing. For instance, the Syrians have expelled foreign journalists and have cut down much access of coverage of what's happening in the country. I believe that if the West was imaginative and started using satellites and drones to really sort of expose the Syrians and what they're doing right now, then suddenly I think you could have the fact that the Syrians themselves realise they've gone too far, they've lost legitimacy, and they could create what I believe is the key aspect to what will happen in Syria, that if the security forces start to mutiny and defect, then we'll have what we had in Egypt and what we had to some extent in Libya, which is a real threat and change of government.
All right, James Denslow in London, thank you.